welcome to the Great Amazing Podcast. This is Tony Mays. I've got a good friend of mine, Dan Paulus, on today. I'm going to go to his bio, LinkedIn bio a little bit. He is the CEO of a company called Core Business Technologies, and we'll talk about what that is. But Dan and I have known each other for, over 20 years now, from back at our old PostalSoft and First Logic days, and we worked together on a few projects, and not enough from my perspective. But he has been a great inspiration to me with his success, and he has definitely moved on from First Logic back in the 2000s, early 2000s, and has moved on to senior management and senior leadership positions. But he's also done that with maintaining his family and keeping his family strong and keeping himself into the sports and activities and things like that he enjoys, and despite probably traveling a couple hundred days a year pre-COVID. But he's had positions of sales leaders, sales managers. He's been a CEO a couple times. So just welcome to the podcast, Dan.
Yeah, thank you. Really good to be here, Tony, and always good to catch up, and especially reminiscing a little bit about our old days.
A little bit about the old days, yeah. Yep. But so when did you first start with the old PostalSoft company? Was that in like the 95 time frame or before that?
Yeah, I think it was closer to 93 actually.
93,
93,
okay.
94, somewhere right in that area.
Yeah, and your job back then was sales. Yeah.
Yeah, came into the when PostalSoft was emerging into the SMB portion of the market with the desktop mailer. There were 4 of us hired. Ironically and comically, 3 of us were called Dan, so they just called it the Dan team. And I knew actually very little to nothing about software at that point. It was a baptism by fire.
Where did you come from before that?
So out of college, I went to work for a company that was into regional printing throughout the Midwest, and very commercial-oriented printers, family-run business, growing, and I had the opportunity to do everything from work in the factory, learning about our processes, our procedures, all the way to managing an art department, which I had no formal training for whatsoever. And then, working with our clients and working with our customers and expanding that. And that was that moment of which, and then running it when, when the ownership, they like to take nice long vacations. They entrusted me. But that was the moment of my life, I think, where I finally started realizing that client facing, go to market, that was something that really, really tripped my trigger.
Sure. Where did you come from before that point? Where'd you go to school at, and where are you from originally? Maybe we'll start back there. But
yeah, my background's pretty humble. I grew up in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Grew up in a family of 4, and we grew up. I joke that I'm the black sheep out of my 4 siblings. I have an older sister that's a very accomplished psychiatrist. She worked at a Harvard Research Center for a time and during her career. My brother was a retired Air Force colonel and pilot for United. He flew many missions with Desert Storm and overseas. My sister is chief human resource officer at Gunderson Clinic, and then there's me, who had a career mostly in sales. But at any rate,
I think you caught up in the last few years. Yeah,
a little bit. But I was the youngest of 4, and grew up in a household that my mom and dad, a lot of love. They took the money that they had and they invested it in our education and sent us all to Catholic education. They were strong, devout Christians and Catholics, and so I went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. It was an amazing experience. The Catholic high school, especially. Some of those guys are still my lifelong friends. We get together. I had a great experience, and then in the course of trying to figure out my next step of life, my sister, who is 18 months older than me, 1 year ahead of me in school. This will give your listeners an idea of how strategic I wasn't. Is she made a very conscious decision to come to the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse for a specific program, and I helped her move in the year before my senior year. I came to La Crosse from the flatlands of eastern Wisconsin, and I said, that's where I'm going to school next year.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
ironically, so it wasn't
So the
too
bluffs,
planned
and
out.
that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I majored, almost double majored. I was 11 credits short of my business major, but everybody always
Mhm.
gets a really good chuckle out of this. My degree is in geography. And
Awesome.
so my plan was to go to graduate school in Rhode Island for urban planning.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then this job with this printing company got in the way, and my life was altered.
Yeah. So did you realize that there wasn't going to be that grad school? Well, I got to go back a little bit more than that. I mean, your parents sound like they were a great example to you growing up and things like that. Did they give you enough room to fail as well or make mistakes and things like that? It sounds like it, but
Yeah, there was the classic, you're on your own, take care of yourself, right?
yeah.
Like, I always knew my parents were there. I always knew that I had love, but I always
Yeah.
knew, we grew up in a very moderate upbringing, and I
Hmm.
couldn't wait to get out of that small house. So
Sure. Sure.
that was my motivation,
Yep.
right? But I always knew that I had air cover if I needed it, but it was also this un uncommunicated but given with love that, hey, it's now you got to go make your way in the big world.
Hmm.
And I think they did that with all four of us.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. That sounds good too. I mean, and then going in, you said in grad school, you thought about grad school, but what was the deciding factor there? Just you needed to make money, or you didn't think Rhode Island was the destination, or which?
Yeah, so I have a passion for geography still to this day, geography,
Sure.
geology, and it's a passion, right?
Hmm.
And I had started working in this business, this printing company, actually in my junior year of college, just for a part-time job.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And so I got a little bit of familiarity just in the factory, working for them part-time. And so they approached me, somewhere in the early to middle of my senior year in college, said, "Would you be interested in, coming on and, taking over this, this, and this?" And so I started thinking about that, right? And
Hmm.
I started thinking about, do I really want to get into urban planning, which is really very different than a go-to-market or a sales or a management
Yeah.
in business. And so I really did some reflection, and I
Hmm.
really realized, and in hindsight, I think I made a stellar decision simply because, as my family will tell you, my wife will tell you, I don't have a lot of patience, and I think working in city government would have tested me endlessly.
For sure, especially if you're the junior city planner for a large city, you don't get to be the one making decisions.
Oh,
That's for
no.
sure. Yeah, yeah. So I know that things like sports and that kind of a thing are very important to you and always, or at least they are now. Were you always you're a big skier, big mountain biker? Was that stuff you did back then also?
So that all came to me. The skiing has been part of my life since I was, I think, born.
Okay.
You can't explain this kind of thing. I grew up in a place that had no mountains, no hills really, and from little on, I always wanted Santa Claus to bring me skis. I can't even explain it to this day. So my parents would get skis, and I'd hike over to this little 50-foot hill, and I'd go up and down for hours and be
Sure,
content with it.
sure.
And then, of course, that turned into, can I go on this little trip with my buddies up to northern Wisconsin? And that
Hmm.
opened up a whole new world. And I'll expand on that a little bit later,
Sure.
because it turned into something major in our life, in my family's life.
Awesome.
But then the cycling aspect of my life, I was always involved in sports, but the cycling actually happened, frankly, the year I got married. My wife and I got bikes.
Okay.
Then for my birthday,
It's kind
our
of that
first year
couple
married,
that couple thing to do kind of thing.
yeah, that
Yeah.
couple thing to do, which quickly turned into not that couple thing to do. And we quickly decided, I thought, hey, getting a tandem would be a great thing for the two of us. And that was another
No.
great decision in life, not to get a
Yeah.
tandem with your wife. My wife and I are
Not
yin
if you
and
want to stay
yang.
married, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't need her claws on my back.
Hmm.
So cycling and skiing have really turned out to be those two things that both have brought me immense enjoyment. They bring me immense camaraderie,
Hmm.
both in terms of fellow athletes, fellow parents of kids who are in some of these endeavors, and just lifelong friends.
Hmm.
It's been, and it's that thing that I think when you have careers like we do, and did. And when you're busy and you make time for it, and it's that release, Tony. It's the piece that helps you kind of keep things within the bowling alley.
Sure, absolutely.
But the skiing piece really turned into something kind of wild for us. I came here, and Mount La Crosse is a nice Midwest hill, right? It's steep.
Yeah.
It's and so just kind of started getting involved in skiing a little bit more. And then when my son was born, I got him into skiing at about 2.5 years old, and our life just took a left turn. He showed some real promise. He made U18 nationals twice on a national level. We took him to all corners of the United States skiing. It dominated our family life, and it all started with my wife and I looking at each other saying, this would be a nice family thing to get into.
Yeah, sure.
And it turned out to be not too much about the favor.
Yeah, but I'm sure that at least gave him a good feeling of investment from your side and things like that you really invested in your son as well. So
yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yep. So when you did come to Postal Soft in '93, how old were you then?
So I would have been let me think about this, 30, 31.
Okay.
I was the old guy
Yeah,
coming
you
into
were. Yeah.
Yes, I was.
How long did you last in the desktop mailer side? So you eventually moved to the government side, but how long did you last?
I did. I think it was about a year.
Okay.
And we had some nice success, right? We were building something from nothing, right? And it was also interesting because you had the rest of the business that was very focused and centered on the enterprise grade piece of Postal Soft. We were kind of this
nickel and dime
young emerging division that nobody really wanted to give too much attention to, but we did, and we were successful, right? And then both Jim Gazowski and Rich Bergerfer kind of reeled me in to come over to the government side, which started, interestingly enough, and Tony's probably the only one who's going to listen to this that might remember. I went to the letter coating.
I'll get Higby to listen to this one too. Yeah.
The letter coating machine, selling hardware coating machines to mailers. So that's where that started, and that was 100% cold calling, 100% trying to build your own pipeline and make my way with that, which then, of course, migrated into more of the where we were integrating our software into both other people's hardware and or then ultimately other people's software. So it was again, I was not in the mainstream part of that business, but our part of the business just kept growing exponentially thanks to some of the leadership on that side of the business.
Sure. That cold calling has got to be one of the hardest things you can do as a salespeople or as a salesperson. I mean, how do you keep yourself motivated doing that?
So, Tony, it is. You're 100% right.
Or you tell me, I guess, if you agree or disagree. But yeah.
For me, what it was is it's hard. There's no two ways about it. It's hard. But for me, what it always was is I always entered it when I got into sales, and I said, "You mean they're going to pay me this base salary, and if I do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to make, that much more." And it was all I needed. I just that carrot out in front of me. And so, by brute force, I figured out a way to make that work. I figured out how to go about executing and building something that I really didn't even really know what I was doing, frankly, in the beginning.
Sure.
Right. We started out, but I like the thrill of the chase. Always have, always will. Didn't realize that about myself when I was younger. And I think that's the important thing for maybe young people that might be listening to this is, you've got a whole lifespan to learn and always be receptive to learning and be open to new experiences because, there was not a single person in my younger part of my life that was in sales, right? So I wouldn't have got that from anybody. But as soon as I got into it, it was like intoxicating, right?
Yeah.
I enjoyed.
Light bulb came on. Yeah.
I enjoyed winning. I enjoyed, scoring a W, and then growing from there. So it was. A lot of people struggle with going into a career in sales. It was a natural thing for me.
Sure. So you moved to the government side of the company to try to help pursue some of those government contracts and things like that. And when was the first time you actually started managing other people as well as doing the sales side of things? How much of a change was that?
It was there as we were starting to get into the government contracting, and Rich Bergerfer was there, and I was working for Rich. And then we were having some success on a lot of these large postal authority contracts, right? So we
Yeah.
started investing further there, and then some people started reporting to me because we were working with subcontractors like Lockheed Martin, right? And
Yeah.
that's a relationship driven business, number one, and then number two is it's working with Postal Soft's technical people to really figure out how we were going to fit into their ecosystem as they're bidding on these large opportunities
Sure.
across the globe, right?
Yep.
So that's
While they're bidding on large ones, our piece at the time was a lot smaller than that. So I think your frame of reference has probably changed a lot the last few years, actually, probably too, I'm guessing, with some of the deals you've been involved on.
so
But still, at the time, I mean, those were big deals for a small company. So,
yeah, they were, and even to this day, if you look at our Australia Post contract, that was that was 5-digit millions, right? And low 5 digits, but it was really a big contract that was had a lot of risk and requirements to deliver behind it. I'll
yeah.
never forget one of those conversations.
Yep.
So yeah, that's when the managing people started and working with people, and I realized at that point too that as much as I loved the actual sales process myself and the relationship building that we were putting in place, because we were building up a lot of partners that would either embed us, integrate us, or utilize us. But there was this fun part about watching people, getting to work with them and kind of helping them on their journey. And so that was probably the first time I realized, oh, there's another aspect of this that I've got to sharpen my saw at, because I hadn't really realized that before.
Okay. What kind of things did you do to help you improve as being a manager, that kind of thing? Did you look at it from that perspective back then, or was that a little bit later on as you matured a little more? Or
So, Tony, that's a great question, and I don't know that I have a brilliant answer for you, other than you realize quickly, and maybe this is part of my upbringing, I'm not sure, but I realized really fast that people were depending on me for their job satisfaction, their success, right? Their financial success. And so it was just one of those things where it was just like the first time I got thrown into a sales role that I really wasn't equipped to do. It's thrown in, at Postal Soft, the greatest thing about that and First Logic as we, grew was there was more than enough opportunity to grow as a person. There were things opening up. We always joked around. We think we kind of ran wild with no structure, but except for the structure that Gus and Rich gave us. But you realize that people were depending on you, and I think that's when you start saying, okay, so I've got to figure out how I'm going to enable them to be responsive to them, be supportive of them, and then figure out ways to enrich somebody's job. And the whole while too is people we all care about our W-2s, right? But at the end of the day, what you really care about is you want to work with people that you're like-minded with, or that you want to be, right? So always took the time to develop personal relationships, not deeply personal, not friendship, but from a job perspective, work balance, just making sure that I understood, what they might be going through and with their family, or making sure I always ask questions. And I think, that's the other part to this is you can never be curious enough about other people. People love talking about themselves. So the thing and I've learned this over and over in my career is to really be engaged and interested in what others have to say.
Sure. Yeah, that's awesome. So, you've probably actually been working more not for First Logic and Postal Soft now than you did for them. So I don't want to spend too much time. I mean, I wanted to definitely hit that because that's our frame of reference. But you left the company, was that 2005-ish, around there sometime?
2002.
2002. Was it that long ago? Okay. Yeah.
It was November of 2002.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And went to work for, at the time, it was, what was that? Publishing Business Systems.
Right.
So kind of working, doing sales, but VP sales kind of thing.
Yeah. It was a tough choice because I really enjoyed the people that I was working with. I was really enjoying what I was doing. But this afforded me the opportunity that I probably 3 years before that I didn't even know I wanted, but it afforded me the opportunity to be the guy leading the sales organization.
Sure.
This was one of our, by dollar value, one of our largest software OEMs, and that they had integrated our technology. I had taken, when I inherited that relationship, it was very combative. We approached it with, hey, let's solve this, let's work together. Rising tide raises all ships. And we turned it around in, the team and I in months, right? Because we took some personalities out of the mix and just listened to them. And so at any rate, they apparently liked what they got out of me. And so they approached me, and that was a big move. They wanted my family to move to Minneapolis. Somehow we forgot to do that. And it was, it was in a business. So the fun part about that job was that literally, true enterprise class software, long sales cycles, direct to customers. And I was managing a team, that, at the time was in transformation, and they wanted to bring in some new blood. And so we, in the course of, from 2000, basically, so I left here in 2002. Yeah. We sold the business in 2007, and literally just about doubled our revenues in 4 short years. It was a blast. Super hard work, but we were in a position with great members of that team, and I'm talking about in the company. Some of the people I still stay very close to, and that's another thing about people's careers. You always hear, I was fortunate to work with great people, just really great people, and so that taught me a lot of things that I didn't know that I either wanted to do or had the ability to do. But turning that thing around and really reigniting the sales engine there and getting us sold was just all new territory to me. It was an eye opener.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in a second, but I just want to, I know at first logic that moving up to be that guy in charge of the sales department, it just wasn't going to happen because there was a couple guys, at least one guy firmly entrenched there that wasn't going anywhere. And so unfortunately, that's the kind of thing that happens sometimes, is that if you have ambitions to be, or if that's what you see your dream as, sometimes you just have to make a change, right? And that's going to be hard for everybody all around. So it was definitely.
And I think that's another thing too. I might have been blind to it, but as I look back on my career, I've always been. Maybe, but I've been always willing to take a flyer, take a leap, and I don't even know if I processed it at the time, but just willing to put yourself out there and try something new.
Sure, I gotta adjust here a little. So I'm standing in front of the light, but so I mean, and I don't mean ego in a bad way, but did you also want to kind of prove yourself a little bit as that guy that could do that, I think. And so
without question, I didn't realize growing up, I played sports. I didn't particularly excel at anything I played. Traditional sports, I was average to above average, right? And that's the best I can say. But I didn't realize how competitive I actually was until I started becoming a young man, right? Yep. And that competitive part, I think, you have it or you don't. You can develop it, I think, as well, but it was inherent, and I just I exposed it in myself, and that's what got me to just say, and I didn't have a lot, Tony. Some people come from prestigious schooling, or you come from,
that's all you see is ego, and they can barely fit their head in the door, kind of thing.
Right. I didn't have that to really fall back on to say, hey, I've done something. But it was all rolling up the sleeves. It was hard work, and again, lucky with being exposed to really good people along the way. Just really good folks.
I know one of my weaknesses and it still can be at times, is letting my ego get the best of me, and thinking that I actually have done something, or that I deserve something, or that I deserve this or whatever. But did you ever have any instances where you had to kind of take a step back and just center yourself a little bit to catch your breath or something, and take a different perspective?
So I'll give you two examples. One is a little bit comical. Within this household with my wife and two kids, just about every week I've got they, as they know me as dad, right? And
Yeah.
so every once in a while I have to remind them about a few things, but at any rate.
Yep. Yep.
And I think the other time too is my long stint with New Cycle, which became Naviga, right?
Hmm.
And
That was
we had
next. Yeah.
I had 6.5 years there, and that was one where I think we'll cover that when we get to it,
Yeah.
but a
Yep.
little bit of hubris there too as
Okay.
well.
Okay. So next, after PBS, you went to Digital Technology International and kind of moved up there as well. That was a Utah company? Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Awesome.
So here's a stint where when I went to PBS, it was all the same end market from PBS to DTI to News Cycle, right?
Okay.
And was all through acquisitions of that
Gotcha.
period of so from 2000 and roughly 3 through 19, I was in the same industry, technically in the same companies, but there was
Sure.
M&A activity going on. So
Well,
DTI
that was
was
a big downsizing and consolidation in the print market and all that, and
huge.
mailing and all that
Media
kind of
was
stuff.
going
Yeah.
through wild transformation,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
and private equity was also ramping up substantially in buying enterprise software. Enterprise software is sticky. Our software was very sticky, even
Hmm.
though the market was starting to constrict.
Yep.
But DTI was awesome because Utah based, number one. Number two is when they acquired PBS, I was the head of sales. DTI had a head of sales, and I just assumed I was out on the street going to be looking
Yep.
for a job.
Yep.
And through a series of really interesting actions, I ended up being the head of sales, ended up being the head of sales and marketing again, which anybody that knows me knows I really don't have, other than on the job learning about marketing.
Yep.
So any of the old Postal Soft or First Logic marketing folks, you can get a good chuckle out of that. But marketing kept finding me from that point on throughout my career. So I don't know
There
what
you go.
happened there, but
You're blessed. Yeah.
at any rate, so yeah, took that
When you
on.
say interesting actions, what does that mean? You can't just hide behind that one. So.
So it was a founder-led business by a brilliant man named Don Oldham, and he had some grand visions for his son that was in the business, and those visions just didn't manifest with our board of directors at that point
Okay.
in time.
Gotcha.
And so there was some changes made, and I inherited some of the son's pieces. And so Dave Oldham, by the way, went on to wildly successful. He's quite a well-to-do man at this point.
The
So
the son you're talking about?
the son, yeah,
Okay.
he did
Well,
not stay in our business, and
yep.
For his dad, that was a very sad moment in his dad's career with this business.
Sure.
And then there's this new guy from the Midwest who he's got to work with now, right? So but here's the deal: is that Don and I ended up becoming fast compatriots, I guess, as you would
Sure.
say. He was a brilliant technologist, brilliant visionary, and I had some skill with selling, and so he and I would visit our key clients, and we developed a really strong 1-2 punch. We developed a strong working relationship, and when it came time at DTI for the board for succession planning and fast succession planning, the board went out, of course, and interviewed many external candidates, and I was one of the internal candidates, and they selected me to be president. So that was a very humbling moment in my life because because of his backing, because of where we were at as a business at that time. Really, we had been really growing, ironically, through the market constricting. We had some.
Yeah, because this was right in the middle of, you got there in 2007, right through the economic downturn and everything going on with that, and right up.
Media is going like this. We pivoted from on-prem enterprise to SaaS.
Wow.
And that was
2010, 2012. Nobody was doing that much yet.
Nobody was doing that. We were one of the first. We wrote a business plan for our board to sign off. We reconstructed our pricing, our contracts, and it was once again thrown into something I had no background in, but I just take the time to figure it out. And one of the reasons why we were acquired was we had signed in 2012, we had signed about 10 to 11 very large 5-year long-term SaaS contracts, because even though media companies were constricting, they still needed digital technology, right? Not our company per se, but they needed to pivot from print, and we were a good option, right? So we had closed a lot of business, and then that got the eyes of some other people. But this was also a moment in our career where my wife and I had to kind of look at ourselves. And when I was promoted to president, that required a move to Utah, and we made the move. We made the move. Our kids were in sophomore year and 8th grade at the time. My son, I thought it was going to be this stellar, outstanding experience, which it actually was. He was on the Park City ski team, and we went to places we never would have gone otherwise. But he really missed the Midwest. And my daughter, she thrived. She loved it there. To this day, she's
so
like,
almost the way you would have flip-flopped with your son being as crazy about skiing as he was, you thought he would have just been perfect,
Right.
Yeah. That must have been you were still traveling probably a couple hundred days a year, I would guess then too, weren't you?
Yeah.
You were in Utah, but
yeah,
still.
I was traveling out of Utah. I became president, so you pulled back a little bit on that, but we were international, and that's a theme throughout my career. Then from that point on, is spending a lot of time in Australia and a lot of time in Europe as well, with our clients there. It was a the new role, new team to manage in a new way. And then, making sure that we were staying out in front of our clients who were literally all over the globe. So
your wife she must have that tough personality to be able to survive you being gone that much with 2 kids as active as yours were, I think. Would you agree with that?
I probably shouldn't share this with your listeners, but I always joked out she had a great boyfriend. So no, my wife and I have been together for 34 years now, I think.
Awesome.
Married for 31 or 32. No, she's
How'd you guys meet, by the way? How'd you guys meet?
Oh, yeah, this is the best story ever, right? So I'm gonna make it as short as possible. I will call it a love at first sight.
Okay.
It wasn't for her; it was for me. Okay, and I was a poor college student. My senior year in college, I walked into First Federal in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I think to deposit my paychecks. Think about that today. I literally had a physical piece of paper. It was probably a $50 paycheck, right? And I put it in my bank account. I still think about that and how funny that is for today. And I saw her walking through the lobby.
Okay.
And then just like that, she was gone. And then I met her out one night. And that's how it happened.
So you had to sell her a bit on your qualifications to be her.
Well, it was I extracted her phone number, so that was my first successful sale with her. But our first date wasn't anything to write home about. She wasn't feeling well, and I honestly we joke around about it. Wasn't even sure if I was going to call her for a second date, and of course, you know how that changed. So,
yep, exactly, yeah. So, okay, so you're in Utah, and that went through 2013. Or actually, did it go longer than that? Or was that when DTI was acquired by Naviga?
We moved out and committed to the move, and by the way, Utah's always been like a second home state for us. Annette and I, before we had kids, vacationed there. We've skied there. I've ski raced there. My son ski raced there before we ever moved there. Utah so the fact that this turned out like this, it's another one of those higher power things that says, wow, I can't believe this is actually happening.
Springville kind of the Salt Lake City area, or more
it's
Park
southern
City?
It's southern Provo, right? And
okay.
So but we lived in Park City, so I had a long commute every day, 55 minutes, but it was one of the most beautiful drives. And it was, I would talk to Europe on the way in, and I would talk to our people in Australia on the way home on the drive. So the drives went like that, right?
Nice.
But so this opportunity to be in Utah, to live in Utah, and so we're going away, and sure enough, we start getting knocks on the door for this business, which was, I don't know that the private equity firm that owned us was ready, but anyway, so we kind of, my job turned more into from running the business to preparing the business, right? Okay. And so I was doing both simultaneously. Tony, again, for your listeners, I've never prepared a business for sale. I've been through a couple of things.
I suppose even with First Logic, you'd probably seen being at the VP level back then, you had seen some of, because even in the late 90s, unbeknownst to those of us at the regular working level, they were already looking at sales back then, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I had
you had to have seen
inklings.
some of that, but you weren't involved. Maybe you weren't directly involved with some of it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I really wasn't, but there was a guy with the initials RB, we'll keep him confidential, that kind of would kind of keep me posted on that.
Yep.
But I was also involved when we sold PBS to DTI, and
Sure.
so I had some familiarity. But at any rate, we started getting these knocks on the door, and we went through a number of management presentations, and one leader really started to stand out in this process. They were called Vista Equity Partners, and for anybody who's swims in these types of circles, Vista is one of the most successful private equity firms on the planet, right? They've had a little bumpy ride lately, but they're doing just fine. And so at any rate, that was through, let's say, December of 12. And, we just couldn't come together quite on a valuation. Close, but not come together. And then another thing happened. So then in early January, what was happening in the business is we had been so wildly successful selling these contracts, these long 5-year SaaS contracts. Well, what happens is, your cash flow really changes in a business radically when you go from big injections of enterprise licensed software that help fund payroll, that help fund your expenditures and your cost of goods. And we went to these little micropayments, monthly micropayments, right?
Yep.
And so we were experiencing a riptide in the business financially. We had great success and great revenues over the next 5 years, but we were in this point where we were this big of a company that was built for these big injections of enterprise software. So we had to execute on a very substantial reduction in force in the business.
That's awesome.
Had never done that before. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know how those things go, and that was a humbling experience, right? But it was the right thing for the business in terms of its ongoing and its sustainability, right? So and then that's what, about a month after that, apparently Vista liked us a lot better.
Well, if you look at that complete bottom line of expense and you cut 20% off that or something with no effect on your ability to do business, then I think we saw that a lot back in the First Logic days with our layoff we had there too, is that, and it's probably true for most companies, you accumulate a certain amount of dead weight and there's still people you have to treat with respect and dignity and things like that as part of that. But do we really need everybody that's there right now? And it's a definite change and heartbreaking to people, but sometimes it's, for the company, it's a good thing to do. So how did you balance that? Yeah, how did you balance that? I mean,
so this is one of the hardest things I think any person, whether you're a manager or not a manager, in the business world, has to either be on the delivering end or the receiving end, right? And so, the first and foremost thing, the way you handle it with your management team is you kind of walk them through why we have to do this. You walk them through. Then the next part is, and this is, again, this is a hard process, and you have to be incredibly thoughtful about how you execute on a plan like this. You have to be thoughtful to the people that will be leaving the business and taking care of that in a very respectful fashion. But then you also have to be very cognizant of the people that are still there. Yeah. And there is, for a period of days and weeks, there's a sense of loss in those folks that saw people that they knew and loved and worked with for a long time no longer there. So it's not a one and done event, right? You don't execute the plan and you're done and you're over with. You have a team of people then that are left to carry on, and you have to be incredibly mindful and planted with that process as well. So it's really, at the end of the day, Tony, my management style is we work in technology, right? And it's all intellectual property. But at the end of the day, this is going to sound very trivial, but it's all about the people. Without great people, the right people in the right seats, you just have a business, right? So
Yeah.
That's how we got
Well,
through
and
it.
did DTI kind of appeal to you also because did it grow as like a family-owned company, you said, right? So there
It
must have been
had
a
been.
lot of long-term employees there that suddenly had changes on coming up on them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very familial, very yeah, very culturally very tight group. So,
Yeah, awesome. Well, I mean, listening in that case is probably more what people want than anything, I'm guessing, and they just want to be
mhm,
heard if they
yeah.
have something to talk about. So, yeah,
Mhm, yeah.
great. So then, so did you went with DTI into Naviga?
Yeah, so then
Yeah.
this is when Vista acquired DTI,
Okay.
and Vista saw a real opportunity in our space, not just to buy our company, but to buy about 4 or 5
Bunch
of
of
our
them.
competitors and put them
Yeah.
together to build scale. Um, this was a period of my career, Tony, and I would encourage anybody to, if they have the opportunity to jump at it, where you learned really excellence in running a business, all of the procedures, processes, best practices, the challenge of bringing 5 competitors. Initially, Naviga now I think might be 11 or 12 companies.
Hmm.
When I left, I think we were 9 companies, 10
Yeah.
companies.
Looks like.
But initially it was 5 direct competitors. So talk about
Wow.
chaos. Well, it
Egos
wasn't
and
chaos.
attitudes. Well, just different systems and different attitudes, different philosophies, all of that putting together at once. Yeah.
And we were direct competitors, so we knew each other, right? And we knew what people had said about each
Yep.
company
Yep.
competing against it, right? So my job, and I was interim president of that company.
Okay.
I was so from July through October, November. I was running that business of integrating our
Wow.
companies, and so I had to bring together these fierce competitors, and I brought a lot of people together. We had sessions, and hey, we're in the same boat now. We tribalism to the side, and we have to. We're no longer the names of who we were. So there was a whole process behind that. Vista was incredibly awesome about their guidance with that too, and how we went about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you ever want to have a lot of fun, try that.
Quote unquote. Yeah. Had you moved back to lacrosse by then too?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. That was
Awesome.
that was the funny part. We moved. We didn't have time to wait for the movers, and so we moved ourselves during all of this.
CEO of the company packing up a U-Haul. There you go. Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
That's humbling too, by the way. And
Yeah.
and we have all agreed that we will never do something like that again. So
Yes.
it was. Yeah.
And here I sit traveling across the country with my family and
You're
300
right.
square feet of
You're,
RV.
you're
Yeah.
doing you're
Yeah.
doing a little
Yeah.
bit better. I like your style. I really like your style.
Absolutely. Well, we try. So yeah, but those kinds of things dealing with, I mean, if you're dealing business level type stuff is one thing, but when you get family level stuff that you're not expecting or that can almost trip me up more, I think sometimes is the little things that, I get done working all day and I'm like, oh, I just had a good day or I had a bad day or whatever. But then, hey, my 2-year-old doesn't care what kind of day I had. It's just he
Yeah,
comes running. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yep.
Well, and that's good for you, Tony. Be mindful of that 2-year-old. My son's 24, and he'll tell you, Dad, you were pretty busy while I was growing up. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I get that with Adam, my 19-year-old, is that I mean, partly because of the divorce with being every other week, but then I traveled quite a bit when he was younger too. So yeah, we get some of that too. That definitely not as much as you, that's for sure. I think you set some new records for miles or something like that. But yeah.
yeah, Delta likes me. Yeah, so.
So that with Naviga went until 2019. That was a pretty good 6-year run. So
Yeah, it was fantastic. Like I said, Vista, great operators. I learned. I think if I thought I knew a lot before I got there, that was another very humbling experience.
mhm.
I got to learn really fine tune and sharpen my saw even further. Got put in a lot of situations to execute on initiatives, strategies,
Did they
and
specifically train you, or was it just your involvement in running the business that did that for you?
no, what it was then, it was and every private equity company has their playbook about how they
Sure.
want to buy a company and how they want to execute um, to an exit,
Okay.
right? And
Okay.
and and so there's you can do a growth plan, you can do an EBITDA plan, right? You can be in M&A for financial reasons or strategic reasons, right? And you can be purchased just because you're from a private equity from a private equity or from strategics. It's actually a fascinating world. I've worked for 3 private equity firms, all different from each other. And so I got a lot of exposure. It was really interesting. But the Vista part is they're famous for their playbook. It is a highly held secret and protected intellectual property. But I was given the keys to take, from a CRO perspective, to take then, because that's where I morphed from being the interim president to CRO, and execute on all these types of best practices, right?
Oh, awesome.
That you would see, we were a $100+ million company. I'll just leave it at that. Because this is where I have to be kind of careful with what I say. So, but we were operating
because you're private, basically private company at this point, right?
And this is all non-disclosure stuff, right?
Sure.
But so we were using operating procedures and practices that you'd see in a $1 billion company, right? So it was eye-opening.
And they had experts, at their level to help you if you had questions, kind of a thing too.
Yeah, I remember
like
when I started with Vista,
like a McKinsey type thing or something like that.
Exactly,
almost,
right? Yeah. When I started with Vista, they had a Vista consulting group, and I think it was 5 people. When I left, I think it was 100 people.
Wow.
And they would fly into acquired companies and help you get on your merry way. And it was
awesome.
It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. So yeah, that was it was 6 years of a run there, and it was just time, right? I knew that. Kind of the trajectory, what I had done, I had kind of done it. And, there was that moment, and I remember it really, really well, where I was sitting at the kitchen table and my wife said, Dan, you're not having fun anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what started it all. And that led to a really great exit situation with them. We collaborated, and then I had a year off. Which I didn't know if I was going to come back and work or not. So it was, but this is where, too, your partner can play such a big role in your life. Like, I was in the forest for the trees. She was watching this, materialize, and it was just really obvious right to her. And so thankfully you've got somebody, your wing woman looking out for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So time off, phenomenal.
Yeah. I saw lots of pictures of you going cycling and doing all kinds of fun stuff there that I was jealous of, but it looked like a lot of fun. So until what'd you do? Hurt your knee or something like that, cycling? Or was that after you started working again? But
that was afterwards. That was afterwards. But I even during this period, I was busy here in La Crosse, working with a local, very prominent real estate developer, and we were working on some really, really interesting stuff with both the city, the county, many organizations in La Crosse to really accelerate middle-class income housing in the city of La Crosse.
Awesome.
There's a devoid of inventory of middle-class housing in the city, and you always think it's because we're constrained by a river and bluff. And really, it's for a variety of other reasons as well. But the city is such a center to this whole bigger community, and they provide services and goods. But yet, the city's not growing. But Onalaska, West Salem, La Crosse, and Holmen are exploding, right? Yep. So the city was very interested in what we were talking about, because from a tax roll basis, this was not a non-for-profit initiative. It was for a for-profit enterprise. And so anyway, that kind of kept me busy. It kept me, and again, something new, never done it. But I really enjoyed working with this person. I was personally friends with him from cycling. And then COVID hit, so that kind of stopped that. And around the same time COVID hit, the phone rang for this endeavor that I'm on now.
Awesome. So now you're with Core Business Technologies. What does Core do? Can you give us a quick 30
we are
seconds?
so here, think about us this way. We are in enterprise payments and revenue management. So people like in the healthcare, our 3 verticals are higher education a little bit, but then healthcare and government. So the Cleveland Clinic is one of our biggest accounts, and they use us because they're taking payments in from thousands of sources, many departments, many devices. And so we take all of their payments in and we process, reconcile it all to their GL, and then, and then move it through the payment process piece. So, we're a very, in part of our business, a very complex piece of software, enterprise software that integrates into large cities or large healthcare organizations, and helps them with
Epic and things like that.
Yeah. Cleveland Clinic is a big Epic user, so we're working right alongside them there. And then part of the business is really more about straight payments and merchant processing from that moment that somebody in a municipality taps a credit card to pay for their taxes or to pay for their parking ticket or their speeding ticket. And that whole process of how that gets reconciled and rationalized. Talk about I had no
this is kind of a theme here. Dan's moving into places he had no experience doing stuff and still makes it work. So
well, they brought me in. These were the equity firm I'm with now are some ex Vista people as well. We got to know each other a little bit. They called me up and this sounded fun. It sounded interesting, and it has been. So it's
you started. When did you start with this company?
Started in May of 2019, or 2020, excuse me, right in the middle of COVID.
Middle of COVID, you take over as CEO of a company and can't travel to meet anybody in the company or anything like that. So
no, I've been to each one of our facilities. Rhode Island's our headquarters. I've been there twice. I've been to Indianapolis once. I've been to Florida once, and Utah. Well, Utah I've been to many times, but we've got a small population there. We're also in the middle of another acquisition. So this is kind of it's almost like this is the culmination of my experience of because I've been through. I calculated it the other day. I think I've been either on the buy side or sell side 15 times through a merger or acquisition.
What did you say to the people the first day you came on? Hi, I'm Dan. Happy to see you.
Good luck. Hey, strap in. We're going for a ride.
Yeah.
No. This is one again where it's just introducing yourself and it's talking to them one-on-one. Right. Held a lot of town halls. Tried to reach out for a lot of one-on-ones. First priorities to meet your leadership team that you're going to work with. But my approach with this and with any type of new situation is they've got to know who I am, right? So I quickly started a cadence of kind of how do I work? What are my principles? What's the culture that we're going to have here? And how do we work together, right? And so it was I've been living on this with this backdrop for over a year now, living on video, and I'll have to tell you, it's pretty effective. It's not perfect, but it's effective.
Yep, versus all the time you would spend in airports and driving and things like that, and you can actually be doing productive work now.
If you ask my wife, I was way more efficient with this process. Over the winter in particular, it's dark, it's cold. The time you get in your office, the time you leave, no big surprise to you or anybody else. You put in really long days when you're building something like this, and it was like between COVID and the time of year, it was perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So between all these, I mean, it sounds like flexibility is probably one of the names of the game for you too, isn't it?
You whether it's for yourself personally, whether it's for the teams that you manage, and especially now in this day and age, people have a lot of choices. They can go work just about anywhere, especially now coming out of COVID. And you have got to create an environment that gives people flexibility. It gives people if you got to go run an errand during the day, hey, no big deal, right? It's you've just where do you need to work from, right? We're coming out where I just had a town hall yesterday announcing our back to the office approach and policy. And we're going to embrace a hybrid model, and that's flexibility, right? It's going to take more to manage it, but I believe it's the right approach in terms of giving people, the choice and the option and the flexibility.
Yeah. So if you were trying to hire a new VP or something, what would you tell them to say why should I come work for Dan?
Well,
does it work that way at that level? I don't know. I mean, you tell me. I've never been hired for a VP job, so you tell me.
So what it is it's first of all, I want to make sure, because when I hire, and I've been through a lot of it lately, it's as much about them being right for us as it's about us being right for them.
Sure.
So, people are always kind of surprised at how many questions I ask in an interview. And I'm asking because I'm asking them about what they're looking for. What do they
Sure.
want? Like what motivates you, and what does a good boss look like to you? Like, so, I want them to understand what's important to them before I try to sell them or tell them how great our company is. I'll always give them a strong dose of one of my tenets is that, and I won't use the slang word of this, but we just don't deal with bad people, right? I just can't have that on the team. People have to, as long as I create the right vision, the right culture, then you want to make sure you have people on your team that fit that, right? And so through an interview process, that's what I'm trying to ask them. I'm trying to understand what are they looking for, right? What do they want to accomplish?
Is there usually for a position, is there usually a first round before they get to you of interviews? Like somebody doing a pre-interview at the HR level before they get to you and you tell them, if you see ego as number one with this guy, I don't even want to talk to him, kind of a thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless their CV is and I actually had that. Happen. On a couple of them, and I took the interview regardless. It was a very key position. I took the interview, and it was validated. I'm like, I don't think this person's going to match, the culture we're trying to build here.
Yeah. I think we saw that a lot too back in the day with people that just had their own plans, their own designs, and you probably know exactly who I'm talking about as far as they wanted to build their own company out of our company and have their own little pond to play in, but it's if you're not going to fit inside the culture, then something's got to change, right?
That reference, Tony, framed a lot of my philosophy and a lot of my managerial approach. And frankly, I think it framed a lot of why I'm at where I'm at, right? It's like, I think that what I saw play out as you described there was something that I just didn't want to repeat when I had the opportunity to be in charge.
Awesome. So you mentioned you had the one tenet of, and I'll say it, no assholes in the company, but kind of a thing.
That's
but
it.
Yeah. But what are some of the other key characteristics you look for in the people you work with?
Yeah, so the other key piece is, certainly, you want somebody to have, I don't, in certain roles, they don't have to have specific industry experience, depending on the role.
Mr. Geography major.
Right. I proudly announced to the whole company that I'm the guy that knows the least about payments in our business.
Sure.
But my other tenet is that, I arrive at, leading a team is I'm generally not the smartest guy in the room. I don't have to be. I need to surround myself with people who are. But the big piece is, as I said, anybody coming in we will be respectful in debate. We will have rigorous debate, right, on issues, initiatives, strategy. But at the end of the day, if the team can't come up with our path forward and our solution, I'm more than happy to make that decision. Like I don't collaborate just to keep things winding on, and that's what the team knows. Like when we get into situations, I'm always ready to make a decision. Had a small one of those already early today, and we just made the decision and moved on because it needed to be done.
But you usually want to be the team to make the decision, though. Even if it's maybe 90% of what you do you still go with the team's decision? Yeah.
Absolutely. And
awesome.
And this is also going to sound trivial, but we can't be afraid to make a mistake. Just adjust. We can't shoot for perfection. That's a misguided piece.
Yep. So you also, you mentioned before of a little bit of you want it to be kind of a team decision or everybody working together, but it's in the end you're in charge. So balancing your ego against getting the team's involvement and things like that, you don't want there to be ego, or you don't want your ego to get in the way of doing the right thing, I'm guessing is kind of where I was trying to go with that.
That's you're absolutely. It's, I can show an ego if I want to. It's like in the box, right? And again, it's that humbleness that you have to, as a leader, be. And you have to understand that the people on your leadership team are also looking to advance their careers, and they're looking to be a voice, right? And so you've got to allow, it doesn't have to be Dan making these decisions. It has to, I want people to step up. I want them to be conviction, to show conviction. And but with conviction, you better back it up with data and logic.
Yeah. Are you trying to one of the biggest quotes I've heard from other leaders was trying to train your replacement? Have you ever been in that position where you've tried to enable people to grow to be the president of a company like you are?
So really interesting question, right? There's been a couple instances where that's the case, and I've identified somebody and started working on because I've understood their career path ambitions as well.
Sure.
But then as I think about you asking that question, Tony, and some of the quick turns to what happened in my career and some of the way we exited specifically to private equity, it just didn't manifest that way, right?
Sure.
So, but certainly here at Core, I'm not a young man, right? And as I always like to tell my team, but at any rate,
you've got far less gray hair than I do. I'll tell you that. But that's...
Yeah. My friends, my close friends absolutely believe I spend all this time flying through Minneapolis to go get my hair dyed and get hair. Total truth. But no, it's one where it's an important piece, and I'm already thinking of those things with Core. So.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's more along the lines of just trying to. Everybody has a path that they want to go, usually, unless VP of sales, that's their destination job or something like that. But usually people, what do they want? What's, where do they see this? Where do they see themselves growing over the next 5 years? And trying to get people to articulate that has got to be a little tough sometimes. Hopefully,
absolutely. You got to draw it out. You got to have those personal conversations. What are your ambitions, right? Yeah. And then you also have to be, as a leader, I'm not immortal, right? It's like, there's things that happen in life sometimes that aren't good things, right? I lost a brother last year, surprisingly, and that just starts playing. But my point here is that, what happens if Dan wins the lottery or something happens to Dan? Core better be able to keep going, right? Yeah. It's my responsibility as a leader to make sure that there would not be a hitch in the giddy up, so to speak.
Yeah. Sorry to hear about your brother as well. That I don't know how, if you don't want to go down that road, that's fine. But has that changed kind of your perspective on life much?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It sounded like your brother. You said your brother was an Air Force officer and pilot and flew a lot of combat and things like that. But yeah, what did he mean to you, I guess?
So yeah, he was a retired colonel, and he. My brother and I are the opposites, even though we were very close. He was 4.5 years older than me, probably 20 years more mature than I was at any given point. But he was the calm, cool, collective. You'd never realize what he had accomplished in his career. And I was more outgoing, right? And I was the youngest. I was I like attention, right? So those are the traits.
He'd kind of look at you and shake his head a little bit and stuff.
He was pretty patient with me too. But so you learn a lot, right, from that. And we had this life together early on where we were very together in a very small bedroom, and then he went on his path, and we always stayed in connection, right? But he got married much younger before me. He had his family before I had my family. So we were always running in parallel, but I was quite a bit behind. And then we were getting to this point where both of our families were grown and starting to be out, and we were starting to do a lot more together. So I think the takeaway, your question was, many of us, and I'm at the front of this train, didn't understand the word immortality or mortality, right? I've always been centered kind of in the moment and don't probably think about too much down the road.
And you have your wife for that a little bit, but yeah.
Pardon me?
You have your wife for that a little bit, right?
So, that is exactly right. But yeah, an event like that happens to any of us in our life, the impact it had on me is to say, okay, Dan, you've got time. How are you going to use this to its best and fullest? So that's what my wife and I are trying to do now.
Sure. sure. So, all right. Well, you've been with Core for about a year now. I'm not gonna, I mean, where does Dan want to be in 5 years?
I don't think I could say that
Utah?
out loud.
Well, okay, true. Yeah, probably not. Yeah, yeah. Too many. Yeah, that probably wouldn't go over very well, I would guess.
Yeah,
So,
no,
yeah,
no. Core's, we've got a lot of foundational work we've put in. We've got a great private equity firm, a lot of investment going into this business, and obviously, everybody knows the playbook with private equity. So my
yeah,
job, I know what my job is. It's real clear. It's build up this company, build scale, and at some point they'll make an exit on this business, right? So
sure.
for me personally, I know Utah is a big part of our future. We love lacrosse. We're never going to exit lacrosse. We joke that they're going to haul us, my wife and I, out of this house, probably horizontally. But we'll spend a lot of time there, and we aren't too different than a lot of other people. We love to travel.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind replicating the Moss family here, and mimic that for a little while too.
Sure, yeah, yeah. It's kind of, we're up here in northwestern Wisconsin by my parents, and we just extended. We were supposed to head out July 2nd to go through the UP of Michigan and then go down that way and head out east. And my brother was coming in from San Diego with his family, with his whole family for the first time in almost 8 years. So we're like, oh, so we canceled our Michigan plans and we're going to stay in the area for another few weeks. So like,
You
how many
won't
more
regret it.
times? Yeah, I mean, my dad just turned 80. He's had his own health struggles, and thankfully
Yeah.
he's doing a lot better now. And my mom's doing well. But it's like, if we're gone for a year, a lot can change in a year, every
Uh,
year. So yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
does. And you've got your parents, and that's a gift, right?
yep,
So,
yep.
I always joke you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. So hopefully your family's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah, well, yeah, so far, yeah, yeah, we get along so far. So, I mean, I think we had our own struggles as well, but what family doesn't? I mean, where my brother and I, we
Yeah,
shared a bedroom as well growing up. So I think that has its own, and he's also 4 years older than me. So
yeah, pretty cool.
the annoying little brother hanging out, trying to get in my business kind of thing. So
Oh,
yeah,
I was all of that.
yeah. So Dan, any last thoughts? What would you tell somebody that was looking to grow in business, or just what are your tenets for success personally?
Yeah, yeah. I think just a couple simple ones, really, and it's going to sound pretty trite, but first of all, I think anybody listening to this realizes that I just took flyers, right? Like
Yeah.
I had some doors that opened up, and fortunately, I kind of pushed them and ran through them. And I think that's the first step. Is that a lot of times we're concerned or we're too worried. Well, am I going to like that, or am I going to be good at that, or am I? And my advice and what I've done in my career is just
Yeah.
go do it, right? And you'll
Yep.
learn. I think the secret to, and you can define success many different ways, right? And
Hmm.
but the secret to my how I've looked at my career is the opportunity for the people that I've been able to work with, and I genuinely mean that. There is no way that we could have, as groups of teams of people, accomplished the things that we did without some great people. And I think at the end of the day, it's, you have your friends, and then you have your coworkers, and I don't think you have to be a family at work, but you
Hmm.
have to be really respectful of people, and you have to be really interested in people. I think if you're interested, people become interested in you. I think
Sure.
if you show initiative, people and help people, they're always, it's the karma thing. It always comes
Yep.
back.
Yep. Yep. And I think I just personally, I mean, just looking at your family and things like that too, you couldn't have done any of this without the support of your wife and your kids
No.
and things like that. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yep,
Yeah. My wife is the piece of this that has
yeah.
kept it all together.
And I think maybe on that note, we'll call it a day. So Dan, I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your insights. And oh yeah, one last question. I don't know how much of a book reader you are. Do you have any business books you tell, or just not even a business book? If there's one book you could give to somebody to read, what would it be?
Well, I'll grab the one that's closest to me right now, and it's a book called Traction.
Okay.
And this is a book that you'd think after all of my Vista experience that I'd be so well equipped. And this is a book to help Core and to help our business operate even more efficiently.
Okay.
Um, So it's a book that's all about, using the right management practices, the right people in the right places, and really keeping it simple, like trying to run when you've got a far-flung deal. And, we're a company now that is 4 companies, will soon to be 5 companies, all strategic acquisitions, but you've got to keep that glued together. So this book is the book, but then we're going to be implementing all of the pieces behind it. And for anybody in the business world, about operating or trying to take complex things and break them down to simple, this is a great program.
Awesome. Appreciate it. All right.
All right.
Dan, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it, and best
Likewise.
of luck with the rest of your journey. So
you bet, and keep some pictures coming, Tony. I want to see the rig going.
Will do. I got to do better at that for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.